Hey Greyhounds fans, thank you for listening to the Hounds Huddle podcast on MoravianSports.com, the Greyhound Sports Network, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am L.J. Smith, Assistant Director of Athletic Communications here at Moravian University, and on this episode, I sat down with the head women's basketball coach and Director of Athletics, Mary Beth Spirk. We will talk about how she fell in love with sports as a kid, to being a multi-sport student athlete in college, all the way to finishing her 35th year as the head coach of the women's basketball program, as well as becoming the athletic director in 2017. So let's get this episode underway and meet our guest, Mary Beth Spirk. Thank you again for tuning in to the Hounds Huddle podcast, streaming on MoravianSports.com, the Greyhound Sports Network, or wherever you listen to your podcast. I am joined by a very special guest, the women's basketball coach, also the Director of Athletics and Recreation here at Moravian University, Mary Beth Spirk. How are you doing today, Mary Beth?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to chatting with you today, LJ.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. As things kind of wind down into the summer, we have some time to reflect on the past season, but also this gives me an opportunity to kind of learn more about you and how you came to Moravian and how everything came through for you for your very great career here so far, finishing 35 seasons, I believe. So
I don't know. This is going to be tricky. You're going to test my mental fortitude and memory here. So we'll do the best we can.
So we'll start back. What sports did you play growing up? What really kind of got you involved in athletics?
Well, I grew up in a pretty big family. I had 5 brothers and 2 sisters. So, sport was a part of our daily life. We were out in the back playing everything and anything. And because of 5 brothers, I was the 6th man, so I made even sides. My 2 sisters were not as involved. So, we were playing football to baseball to, anything and everything growing up. But, that was a different time. Women weren't playing sports. My brothers were, playing baseball, doing football, wrestling, but there wasn't very much for me. And, my sisters were older than me, and they never had a real interest in it. But I always questioned, why couldn't I play? Really, the only sport I played in grade school that we had in my grade school was volleyball.
Okay.
And so I played volleyball. But one of the things that happened is my dad, he had me, he took me to a track meet, believe it or not. I threw a softball. It was a softball toss, and I ran the 100-yard dash and 440, and we're talking a track that had cinders,
Wow,
so
yeah.
I guess I'm showing my age, but so it was different, growing up when I grew up in the 70s and not having. I'm always jealous of my nieces and my great nieces and all the young women that they have so much available to them and so many camps and you could play anything right now and I wish some days I I had that advantage, but it all happens for the reason. And then high school, I really just played softball. I didn't play basketball because, again, I wasn't exposed to it when I was younger. I loved basketball, but I didn't play it. I played in college, and I played basketball, softball, and I started playing volleyball. I played 3 sports as a freshman and then ended up just playing basketball and softball for my last 3 years in college.
So there was no such organized sports in your youth. So you playing with your brothers and other kids around the neighborhood, was there anything that kind of pushed you to softball once you got to high school? Was there anything kind of...
I think just playing a lot of baseball with my brothers, and I loved it, and I could throw. I had a great arm, and I loved hitting, and I saw a lot of games with my brothers. So, yeah, I don't know. Now, we played a lot of basketball too when we were growing up, but we had in fact, the hoop is still at my dad still lives in the house we grew up in, and it was on it's on grass. We didn't have macadam, so try to dribble a basketball on grass and try to play with football and wrestlers. That's all my brothers, ended up being football players and wrestlers. They weren't very good basketball players, although I'm sure if they were in this room, they beg to differ. But it became rough, and I will say we broke a few windows in our days, running, fighting, and that kind of thing. But so I don't know. I think just naturally, just from playing, in the backyard, I enjoyed baseball, so softball seemed logical to me. And basketball, I just never really thought I was good enough because I didn't have any proper training. Nobody taught me how to shoot. Nobody taught me how to dribble using both hands and everything that you can do now as young people. I'm going to watch my 4 and 5-year-old great nieces. They're playing t-ball. I mean, they're learning how to run the bases and hit the right way. I never had that opportunity, so it's kind of cool to see the transition. But yeah, I think my love of sports just began from being in the backyard, and we had a pretty big backyard, so we attracted pretty much everybody from the neighborhood as well. So it was a lot of competition, unstructured competition, but it was still competition.
So you go to Dickinson College, correct? Was there any recruiting process? Was it just you went for what you wanted to go for?
Yeah, no, there was no recruiting process. I went because I wanted to be a lawyer, and they had at that time Dickinson Law School, so it was a natural fit for me. I figured, I'd graduate and then I go right to law school right at Dickinson. And again, that was my career path. And the bonus was I ended up talking to the basketball coach and decided to play basketball. And softball, actually, I was a part of the club sport for 3 years. And my senior year, we became varsity. So I guess if you want to say trailblazer, I'll use that term, trailblazer. I kind of like that term, so I'll use it. I was part of, a couple of the women that figured out how to become varsity, and that was really a really neat experience as well. And now when I still follow, obviously, Dickinson and their athletics, and their softball team is unbelievable. So that's kind of cool that I was part of that program as well.
So you're playing at the collegiate level, basketball, softball, and you said you started as a 3-sport athlete. What was the drive for you? Because it's a lot to take on 3 sports, especially transitioning into a student athlete role as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess just growing up, I was always active, so I figured that's what I'm going to do in college. And I think, looking back on it in high school, I think I sold myself short in terms of competing. Again, you have to understand it's the time. It was the time, and my family. My 2 sisters didn't play sports, so for me, it wasn't. It wasn't something that I should do. All my brothers played sports, and it was natural, and so it wasn't a natural thing. But I guess I don't know that I was that mature in college, but once I got there, I figured, well, you know what? I got to take advantage of this, and I played, and then I realized it was a lot of time, and that's why. And quite frankly, I don't know how good I was in volleyball, so I stopped playing volleyball. But I thought I was pretty good in softball, and in basketball, I made the JV team my freshman year, and I vowed that I was going to be a varsity player my sophomore year, and I ended up being varsity. I started as a sophomore, and that was pretty cool. I figured out. Again, I did it pretty much on my own. in the backyard of my parents' house, dribbling on the grass. So, I feel pretty proud about that. I ended up, as a senior, being captain and the basketball team, and so yeah, it's pretty. When I look back out on it, it was a pretty cool time for me.
So you graduate from Dickinson. What was the plan? Because you said law school was the next step. But did you follow through with that? What happened after that?
Well, I took my LSATs my senior year, and yes, the plan was I applied to Dickinson Law and was going to go, but again, it's a time I like I said, I came from a big family, so it was a lot of money at that time, and I was already student loans. If I told you what it cost me to go to Dickinson then to what it is now, you'd be appalled. But it's not a lot of money now, but it was then. So I just didn't have enough money, and decided, because I had three younger brothers that were going to go to college, and all eight of all of my siblings, we all went to college. So it wasn't an easy task for my parents. So I decided I figured, hey, I'm going to take time off, work, get some money, and I'll go back to law school. And at the time, I moved to D.C., to Washington, D.C., because I had done a semester there when I was at Dickinson, and worked with in the Superior Court, which was with juvenile delinquents. And I went back. I moved to D.C., but I couldn't get a job. They made again. It's my age, but Reagan was president then, and he made a lot of cuts. So couldn't get a job. So I moved back home, and was like, okay, now what am I going to do? And I worked at Wiley House. Well, it was Wiley House then. It's now Kids Peace, and yeah, I obviously never went back to law school.
Wow. So it just how you kind of had to feel things out for what was going to work, what wasn't going to work, and you end up back in the area. What kind of transitioned you into the coaching side of things? Because you've spent a career, you've made a career out of this. So what kind of got you involved into the coaching path?
So I moved back home with my parents, and I was working at Wiley House, and I was like, well, what am I going to, I feel like there's something missing. And reading the newspaper, and there was an ad for a job at Moravian, assistant basketball and assistant softball coach. And the head coach at the time had worked at Notre Dame High School, where I went to high school, and my brothers knew her. I didn't know her, but she was the girls coach there and physical education instructor. So, and I think my parents knew her as well. And, they're like, yeah, I'll go apply. They know her. So I applied, interviewed, and I got hired. So I started coaching, assistant coach, part-time, and was working at Wiley House. I liked being in the business. I liked working with socially and emotionally disturbed kids. And again, still in my head, I was going to go back to law school. But, became 1 year, 2 years, 3 years assistant coaching. And then I guess 6 years later, Ann Sinnott Scutches, who was the head coach, she got the job at Lehigh. So there was the job opening here at Moravian. And again, in my mind, I still wanted to go to law school. I liked coaching. And again, as an assistant, I think if you ask any assistant, they're going to say it's fairly not easy, but you don't have a lot of the pressures. You come in, hey, what's going on? Oh, okay, let's go practice. Kids like you. You're not the disciplinarian, so I liked doing that. But the head position obviously was open, and I was like, well, okay, let me see if I'll apply. And I interviewed with the president at the time, Herman Collier, and I got offered the job. So I became the head coach. I was 27, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to go to law school. But even, I got to be honest with you, even then I was thinking, well, I'll coach for a couple years because, I mean, my gosh, I went to Dickinson. I had this whole plan that I was going to be a lawyer. I should go to law school. Um, and I think one year for Christmas, one of my players gave me a, LSAT study guide for dummies or something, like, because I talked about it a lot, and they still were like, Coach, you should go to law school, kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, I started in when I was 87. I got hired in the summer, and yeah, here I am.
Yeah.
At 2022, holy smokes, I can't believe it. So then I ended up getting my master's in sports administration. I did it online. I was figured out how to write papers because I'd been out of it for I think I got it 10 or 15 years after I finished school, and so that's the way it worked out.
So you start here as an assistant, not just for basketball, but for softball. So that position was for both sports. Was that the same when you became the head coach?
Yep. So I got hired as the basketball and softball head coach, and it was a little bit of a shock to my system because, like I said earlier, as an assistant, it's kind of nice. And now I had to run 2 programs, and now it wasn't as intense as it is now in terms of non-traditional seasons. So the overlap, like we didn't really do a whole lot in September, October with softball at that time. But the overlap, of course, when basketball was still going on and softball, that became a little tough. And then when I stopped coaching softball was when we played in the national championship in '92. We lost in the national championship. We hosted. We lost on Saturday, and I was on a plane to Florida. I was coaching third base on Sunday. I don't know. It was hot out, so I'm going to say 3 o'clock. I'm standing. I'll never forget it. I'm standing there on third base. Whoever was up to bat is looking at me for a signal, and I looked at that person, and I was like, first of all, I kind of thinking, who is it? Like, I was still thinking about how we lost in the national championship, and she called a timeout. She's like, Coach, what's the signal? I'm like, the signal? I'm not even sure. I don't know what the signal is. I'm like, just hit the ball. I don't know. So it's that when I realized it isn't fair to the players, and it's not fair to me. I can't do that. And so I came back from that trip, from our spring break trip, and went to the president and just said, and our AD at the time, Rocco Calvo, and said, it's not fair to women and what we're doing. And they agreed. And, I think at the time, a lot of female coaches were coaching 2 sports and we're doing a lot of things. And that's, just the way it was. And not to say, I think some guys, teams were coaching 2 sports as well, but more so in the women's side. So yeah, I stepped down from the softball coach and just coached basketball. So yeah, it was a little crazy there for a while, coaching both sports.
So we'll get to the national championship and that run in a second, but just to kind of go off of the fact that the overlap of a season, especially it's like you alluded to, it's not the same intense of non-traditional into,
right.
But that overlap of playing and hosting a national championship to just trying to switch gears and go to a different sport, that toll mentally, but also what was that experience like going from one to another just that quick? It had to be so difficult to try to manage that.
Yeah, it was, and basketball and softball are 2 different kind of mentalities and coaching, because, at the time, softball rarely got outside because we didn't have a turf space like we do now. so we were inside. So I'd go from basketball practice up in Johnston Hall down. Well, I'm not sure when Bridigan. I think we did have some practices down there. It was built. I can't remember what year that was built, but we used to practice in Johnston Hall softball. We had a cage, and we were hitting in softballs off the Johnston Hall floor. Yeah, it was not a pretty sight. Yeah, it was hard to switch mentalities from a coaching perspective because the kids were different too. So here I am coaching basketball, intense, screaming at kids, and let's go. And softball's a little more laid back in terms of, number one, when you're on the field, if a coach is yelling from the dugout in softball to the center fielder, 9 times out of 10 they're maybe they can hear you, or they can just go, okay, yes. You're not really close to them, so it's not the same intensity. Now, I'm sure some softball players would beg to differ at this point, but it just was coaching different kind of athletes at that time. So, and I was tired. It was hard, going all day, and then you'd leave basketball practice, and I'd have to go to softball practice. And again, it just wasn't fair to. And I think if you ask any of the softball players that played for me, while we had some pretty good teams, they knew, the intensity just wasn't there, and my time wasn't as. I didn't give them as much time as I gave basketball.
So, the time you gave basketball, talk about. We'll move to that run with the NCAA runner-up team. Talk about. You can reflect on it now. I'm sure you reflected on it numerous times. What was that year like?
Well, I just got chills, so that's what it was like.
Yeah.
It was magical. It really was. It was magical. We had lost coming off the year. We lost in the Sweet 16 up at Eastern Connecticut, and I walked with Kathy Beck to court now, but Kathy at the time to go to the interview after we lost, and she was crying, but I put my arm around her, and she said, "Coach, we'll be back next year, but we're not going to lose in the Sweet 16." And I'll never forget it because I think once we got back to campus, probably whenever that day was, the next day Kathy was in the gym. And I just remember thinking, we had a good group coming back, and we were bringing in some pretty good players. That we had a chance at being pretty good. And just that whole year we just were in tune. And I laugh now because people, say to me, "Oh, you didn't have to coach." And really, I didn't have to coach that much. They were so talented, and they were just so focused. It was just a really special group. We ended up losing a really good player, and I don't know many people know this. Tracy Rabbit tore her ACL. She was senior, probably would have been 1,000-point scorer. I think she was 70 points shy of it. She tore ACL. We went to the Bahamas to a tournament, and she tore ACL in the Bahamas. So we lost a starter and still went and played for a national championship. So that's how talented that group was. There were some games, we were just, it was a thing of beauty. We could score, we could play defense. They got along with each other. It was just a really, really unbelievable group. And then, once we win and get to the NCAAs, we were rolling pretty much, and we were hosting, and so that was unbelievable. The energy on campus, and people waited in line. We sold tickets out of Johnston Hall. The line was to Main Street from Johnston Hall. People were waiting in line. Professors would take their classes, and they were waiting in line for tickets. I was just like, what is going on? Like, it was surreal, and then we had to, we got lucky. My assistant at the time, Kathy Schaefer, her son played with uh, Jack McCullum, who was writing for Sports Illustrated. Played basketball with his son. So Jack McCullum from Sports Illustrated is a Bethlehem guy. He came to a lot of our games. We had Sports Illustrated come to our practice and do a shoot before we played, and that was craziness. Like we were in Sports Illustrated. Like, come on, this little team from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So that was an unbelievable experience. And then, the crowds, just the energy was just spectacular. And all I could say was magical. It was a magical year. And the only thing that could have been greater was that we win the game. But unfortunately, I would suspect if we played Alma, 100 times, we win 99 of them. But that day it wasn't meant to be.
I'm trying to fathom the idea of what I think Johnston Hall looks like, and my knowledge of Johnston Hall, to what Johnston Hall's capacity was for hosting a national championship.
Well, we put bleachers on both ends,
Okay.
and so there was standing room only. I mean, people were, I don't, it was probably, if the fire marshal ever came in, it would have been a disaster for sure. Our locker room was in the back right now where the football offices are and where the storage area was. That was our locker room. So we had to come through the crowd to get to the gym. And it was, you couldn't hear anything. People were painted up. When we won to go to the Final Four, my dress was ruined because guys had paint all over their bodies and were hugging me. It was craziness in there. It was loud. We beat a Capital team. I think they won the national championship the next year. They came in and I looked at my assistant and I was just like, well, the jig is up. We're done. They were bigger than us. They just when they warmed up, we were just like, oh boy, this is going to be, and we just played great. And of course, being at home didn't help. You had the National Player of the Year, and I think all told there ended up being there are 5 Hall of Famers or 6 Hall of Famers on that team, and numerous 1,000 points, almost all over 1,500 points. Just an awesome team.
Just an amazing run with that squad to be able to accomplish that. And I had this conversation with Coach John Byrne about how being at one institution for so long, you get to see a program grow and flourish, but you're also a part of something that not every student athlete gets to be a part of. And you've been blessed to have that many opportunities with talent and all kinds of things that go into that. To have those memories that many times with just one squad, let alone the success you've had over your time here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, I feel lucky, and everybody says you're blessed, and it sounds like almost trite a little bit that you say that, but really, that's part of the reason why I've stayed, because it is a great place to work at, and the support, even though there's a couple presidents since Herman Collier hired me, they've all been so supportive of athletics, and I think the biggest enjoyment is seeing what teams can do and seeing the successes. Hey, this morning I was talking to Camille McPherson, who played on one of those NCAA teams and was a really good player, who's now the head coach at Capital, actually, believe it or not, come full circle there. But, when I see, we won an NCAA game with Camille's group, and I see the joy and just the accomplishment on that team's face, their faces. I think that's what keeps you going, and that's what when you feel blessed and lucky and all those words. But it's been quite a crazy run here.
And it's very humbling to be a coach, because you get to be a part of so many individuals' lives. You get to shape them, and it's not always about the wins and losses, but to be a part of as many people's lives as you've been a part of and get to see what they do after their career at Moravian, still a part of Moravian's culture. What's that like to you, being a part of so many people's lives?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I guess that's the word I would say. It's just it's awesome. You know, even though you go through some times as a player and a coach, and I'm sure if you brought in a couple players here, they'd say, "Oh yeah, you fought and you got mad and maybe disagreed, more than once." Yeah, to see them become young women, successful in their careers as mothers, whatever the case may be, is something special. And yeah, to know that you had a little bit of a role, sometimes, tough love, is hard, but yeah, it's really kind of neat to be part of it, and it's hard to reflect. That's why, a lot of the players are like, I'll say, now, did you play with, I can't, I remember all of well, most of their names, I should say, not all of them, because I do look at some pictures and go, really? She was on our team? I don't remember. But I just can't remember who they all played with, and especially if they overlapped on some of the pretty good teams, what years they graduated and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's really neat. And I think that's why, as a coach, you stay in the profession, because you get to see that. They come in as young freshmen and maybe they think they know more than they really do, but they find their path. And I think for me, I've been a good role model in terms of, I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and, kids say that all the time. Hey, I want to do this, but no, now I want to do that. So I can serve as a good example for them that things are going to change as you mature.
Absolutely. We'll take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors and get back into the career of Mary Beth Spirk, into your administrative roles as well here at the university. So we'll be right back.
What can you do with Business Phone from Penn Teledata?
Make a conference call from the coffee shop.
Or connect from the back 9.
With unlimited phone services, 24-hour support, and mobile synergy, our cloud-based technology makes it easy to do business from anywhere. And we do mean anywhere.
No more being stuck in the office.
Which is great for everyone, I think.
Add cloud-based business phone service from Penn Teledata.
St. Luke's Orthopedic Care. Extraordinary care in motion.
Historic Hotel Bethlehem is perfect for any stay. The finely appointed rooms and suites are complemented by excellent dining choices featuring Chef Michael Adams, the tap room for drinks and casual fare, or an upscale dining experience with a view at 1741 on the terrace. For business meetings, visit our Executive Conference Center, stop by our women's boutique for a selection of fashion and jewelry, or grab a cone at our Hotel B ice cream parlor. Historic Hotel Bethlehem is where our history will make the memory of your stay last a lifetime.
Are you looking to get your hands on Moravian University Greyhounds gear? Head over to moraviansports.com and click the link Sideline Store under the tab Fan Zone to find our Moravian apparel store.
Each month, there is a promotion that offers a discount to all things Greyhounds, from hats, hoodies, shirts, and more. Head to the Moravian Athletics Sideline store today, powered by BSN Sports.
And welcome back in. My guest for this episode, the women's basketball coach and director of athletics, Beth Spirk. We just talked about kind of your career path as a student athlete all the way up to being the head coach here, where you have an additional role that you also earned. And I believe in 2017, you were also tabbed the director of athletics and recreation here. So talk a little bit about how that came to fruition for you.
Well, I knew I was the assistant AD for a couple of years, and I knew that I wanted to be a little bit more involved with, all the sports, and I thought I had, some things to offer, and obviously been coaching for a while, so thought I could help some of the younger coaches, and obviously knew the institution as well, so could help communicate outside the department. And then, the opportunity to, the athletic director position opened up, and, initially I probably wasn't as open to it because, again, I thought I was in a pretty good spot. I was coaching, assistant athletic director. I think earlier I said as an assistant coach, you sort of, it's easier. You could kind of pop in and out, and I think I thought the same as the assistant athletic director as well. Do I really want to be in charge, and do I want to undertake that? So honestly, I was walking from Johnston Hall. I had a meeting with the president, Dr. Grigsby, and Nicole Lloyd about my decision. And I called one of my brothers, my brother David, and I was walking across Main Street, so I wasn't far from the his office, and I said, I'm going to go tell the president I don't think I'm going to take the job. And he's like, why? I said, well, I don't know. Yeah. I'm really comfortable right now. Why do I want to change kind of what's happening? And he said, Mary Beth, you can do it. Mm-hmm. And why wouldn't you want to do it? And so I literally changed my mind as I was walking there. And it's kind of an interesting thing because I think as a female, we don't have as much confidence, even though I think I'm fairly confident, but I think ultimately something tells us that, maybe we're not good enough. And, it was funny. It took my brother, because then I thought about every one of my brothers would have said, oh, I can do that job. And they tell me that to this day. In fact, one of my brothers says, oh, I would have won 700 games by now. You only won 600. So, and he knows who he is. So I won't say his name directly, but so I think it was just somebody, my brother just happened to say and gave me that confidence to say, yeah, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? I can't do the job. I don't know. And then I can't do the job. And, mm-hmm. So yeah, I took the job, and it's been I love it. I love being administrator, and like I said before, I like the helping mold young coaches and young staff members, and I've been really lucky to have some really good assistant athletic directors. Renee Hellert came on, and who's now the athletic director at Kutztown and doing great. And now Rebecca May and Bryn McNamara are terrific, and they're vital to making this work for me. And then just having, people like yourself that are part of the administrative team, you and Mark Fleming and Marty Moyle and, Josh Bolts and our our athletic training staff, like it takes, again, I'm going to use some trite things, but it takes a village. And I think that's probably one of my strengths, that I can get, I can get people to maybe give a little extra and work together. So, yeah, it's certainly a challenge, and it's not easy. Basketball is still in the forefront, and I still got to work on that. So it becomes, there's some days that are more difficult than others, but generally, I think hopefully I'm doing an okay job, although it's obviously been tough the last couple of years.
And you're no stranger to this. You were hired as a softball and basketball coach, so it kind of comes full circle again.
Yeah, I
where
didn't
you're
think about
doubling
that.
up, and
Yeah.
you're able to balance with help. Obviously, it's difficult to try to manage everything on your own. So to be able to lean on people is definitely a resource for a lot of people in this department as well. And you just said it's been difficult over the past couple of years.
Right.
2020, the spring of 2020, you conclude your season, and then a global pandemic hits. As an administrator and kind of the face of the department, how challenging was it to navigate through such a confusing time for everybody?
Yeah, I don't know if there's words to even describe it. It was, it was hard. We didn't know. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Nobody knew anything, and people were asking me questions, and I was like, I have no idea. Trying to get through it like everybody else in the world. Just shockingly, you were at work one day, and then you're not at work, and you're worried about, are we playing a game? Is there a rain out, and bumping games up, and somebody's hurt? You realize that's really not even that important. Like, we may lose jobs, and people, are we going to even have a university, and will kids be able to go to school, and all that kind of stuff? So it was challenging at best. And during this time, I personally, my mom was sick as well, so I was going through a lot of stuff that was happening. Trying to manage and maneuver, and it. Without our leadership from Dr. Grigsby and Nicole Lloyd and all the health center staff and St. Luke's, I don't know. We were way ahead of the game in terms of managing it and being able to at least practice and do something. We were pretty fortunate here at Moravian, but yeah, there were definitely trying days for sure.
And going through something like this, not only leading a department, but how did you keep your team engaged? Because they're now learning a whole different way of going to school, because it's completely different now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I got to give young people credit for managing not only the college students, the high school, and even the grade school and pre-K and all those, gosh, that it was hard. And how do part of, you went to college, and part of being in college is you got to see people, and that's how you mature and you learn and you deal with ups and downs, and it's taken from you. And, it's hard to learn. A lot of people can't learn online. It's really difficult. And a lot of, that's where a lot of the mental health issues have occurred, and it's a struggle. So, with my team, I just try to connect with them as much as possible via Zoom and text and touch and base. But again, there's nothing like person-to-person contact. We were just at the Landmark Symposium in Hershey for a couple days, and that energy in that room, I mean, even if we just sat there and talked and didn't even accomplish anything, it just was good to see people's faces. So not to have that contact for so long, I hope that never happens again in my lifetime, and certainly not in anyone's lifetime. But yeah, we somehow figured it out, and at least we got to come back to campus, which a lot of schools did not.
Correct. So being able to have those opportunities of coming back to campus the following school year, some light at the end of the tunnel. We're able to have a modified winter season for basketball. What was it like to finally get back on the court? Because there's still restrictions and guidelines that we have to follow, but you're in person. You're missing that connection there. You're finally having that ability.
Yeah, it was strange, because you're wearing a mask, and then when we played, there were no fans, so you're walking out on the court, and all that energy I said in '92 with all the fans and everybody screaming and yelling wasn't there. We had cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
I mean, it was surreal. It was crazy. And then every time we got tested, it was stressful because I'd look at my phone, what we got tested 3 days a week. So 3 days a week, you're holding your breath. Or if somebody called me, I was like, okay, here we go. So-and-so is going to be out, or this is going to happen. And it was hard. It's hard on the players, the student athletes. My goodness, now you're trying to navigate academics, and now you're navigating basketball, and now you're navigating COVID. And restrictions in their dorms, and going to eat, and on the bus. You can't eat on the bus, and keep your mask on the bus. And the bus is the best time of sometimes why you play the game, because that's when you have you're talking and you're getting to know your teammates and that kind of thing. So everything was different, and it. We just had to keep talking to kids and keep talking to the coaches and keep talking to as many people as possible, however you communicate it. If we'd go outside and be able to take the mask off and at least talk like that. Because, again, it was strange because you had a mask on. So I think that's my strength as a coach. I read people really well and their facial expressions and what they're doing, and all of a sudden that's taken from you. I have no idea when you're talking to somebody and they're making faces. You have no idea. So it was all very, very strange for sure.
And that environment piece for the student athletes, not to have fans in the stand, still trying to provide an experience, let alone play their sport, because it's tough to have a very positive experience if it's limited in different capacities. So the fact that we were able to have games, they were still being streamed to some capacity, so people were watching,
Right.
but that energy wasn't there.
Yeah, no, it was, you had to change, I changed my thought process in terms of pregame and practices, and, it wasn't, not that I don't want to use the term win at all costs, but, we're competitive and you want to win, but that kind of was put to the side a little bit. It wasn't, you didn't have that same, gosh, if I lose this game, the world is crumbling. No, we were just happy to be playing that game.
Yep.
And, and then who was actually going to be able to play that game?
Yep.
Who was safe? Who wasn't in quarantine or, had COVID? And it was just a weird time. So I think that changed as well. And quite frankly, I think it affected even this year in terms of getting back to, okay, let's get back into a winning, more focused mentality. And we're still working on it. And I think for me to transition a little bit too. And I've talked to a lot of the coaches about it as well on staff, and we've said the same thing. It's, you coached differently during COVID, and now I don't know what's normal. Let's get back to normal. I don't know. Is there ever going to be a normal? And I don't know.
Correct. So moving, you were able to get through that year, however we had to. Coming into this most recent academic year, you have quote unquote normal preseason into the regular season. Still some restrictions applied because it's still not gone. We're still having repercussions of it, but you're able to still have a full slate of regular season games, including a trip to Massachusetts.
Right.
So talk a little bit about going on the road to Massachusetts and what that experience was like, because you had a win up in Massachusetts.
Right. Yeah. I think it was okay. This is it. Like we're playing a real season, and this matters. And there was still some of the student athletes were vaxxed and some weren't. So there was still, we had to get tested, and we were still going through some of that. And so there was still some struggles within the team. And, we were still trying to figure out our identity. And, we got a great win up there. It was probably one of the best comebacks that I've been part of. I might be the best comeback, quite frankly, as I'm thinking about it, because it was not looking good for us. I think I don't know what we were down in the fourth quarter, like 20?
It was enough. I think it was 18.
18, yeah. It was, and we weren't able to score a whole lot. But at any rate, and I think that helped us to kind of to regroup. But we all year, at least early on, for the first 2 months of the season, we still were kind of struggling to find our identity, and I think we figured it out by the end of the year, and we were, and I'm hoping going into next year we're going to be a team to do some damage. So you have to weave and bob your way through some things, and I thought we did that. And again, kids were still not going full time to classes. There's still a lot online, and there's still issues, and people were still getting COVID, and people were getting sick and whatnot, and then throw in, we had a ACL tear, and still the normal kind of stuff that was going on. So, it's every year it brings something different. That's for sure.
And it's to build that identity. It didn't help that you were on the road for the entire month of December.
Right.
5 road games, including at least just one conference game. But then you finally come home in January for a nice slate of home games. What was it like to finally be back in Johnson Hall with fans in attendance? It's still restrictive in certain ways, but to have people in the stands again.
Yeah, it was strange. It's like 2 years, like kids. So we had freshmen and sophomores that had never played in Johnston Hall in front of fans. Mm-hmm. And, like there were a couple of times I'd say, well, okay, this is what we're going to do. And they'd look at me like, we don't know. Yeah. This is what we do, because we didn't ever do it.
Yeah.
It was really kind of odd to manage and see. And we still, the crowds were not as big, because still everybody was still a little tentative to come back full strength. So, the beat on the road was tough, and managing that, and we lost some tough ones on the road. And we had, the other thing about, my philosophy in terms of scheduling is I want to play good teams. So we're playing good teams, and, we played a bunch of NCAA teams, and so that didn't make it any easier either. Somebody said to me, "Why are you playing this tough schedule? Like, play some, But you're again. I've been doing it long enough. You gotta, if you want to be good, you gotta play good teams, and you gotta beat good teams. And if you want to go to the NCAA's and do well, you gotta have that competition. So, we had a little bit of a rough schedule, but I thought we came along and really came together. So I'm looking forward to, the new year.
I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Play for K.
Yeah.
Because this is a tradition that you've brought to Moravian and have been able to be successful in, but that's not exactly what it's about. It's the meaning behind Play for K and what that means to you, what that means to the program, and now the university.
Yeah, it's really, again, I just got a little chill going here. And I'll tell you, at our event this year, towards the end of the event, after we played, and we do an event at the Steel Club and do the fundraiser and have a meal, and two former players, Carly Brogan and Nadine Ewald, came up to me and said, put their arms around me and said, "Coach, just want to really thank you. We never realized what this all means, but looking around and seeing all these people and money raised, we realized how special this all is." So, that really hit me, and it makes you feel good when you affected some people, that it's not about just winning and all that, and so it all started. The passion for me was my sister-in-law was a guest coach, and she had cancer. And so that was in February. She passed away that May. So she was sitting on our bench, a couple months before she died. And we were playing Susquehanna and not playing great. We were winning, but we weren't playing great. And they scored. Susquehanna scored. And I jumped off my bench to my seat to go probably yell at somebody. And I walked down, and my sister-in-law, Marcia, is cheering. And I was just about ready. I kind of turned, and I was just going to say to her, "Are you kidding me? Like, you're cheering for Susquehanna?" What? And I realized she was just happy to be there. And she was generally happy for the kid from Susquehanna that scored, because, she was just happy. And then I didn't say anything, because I realized, my goodness, what are we doing? Like, she's alive. She's on the bench, and she's here, and I'll never forget it. And it made me realize, wow, once she passed, it made me realize I got to help to affect and pass on her legacy. And that's really what it became. And then I connected with a couple of the folks that Play for K, and just sort of formed a bond with them. And then the teams, it just blossomed. All the teams I've been lucky to coach, and the community at Moravian has embraced it, and we've just, I think we're close to 200,000 that we've raised, and it always amazes me, what we are able to do, and it's become, just a really big thing for us, the team itself, and then, like I said, the community, and I give out a Marcia Spirk Award at our banquet or the dinner afterwards. And, my nieces and nephews and my brother, they come, and there's great nieces and nephews, and it's really special. It's become a really special thing personally, and for the team.
Absolutely. And now, coming off of that, we look forward to next year. This season's behind us. You had one senior who I believe elected to come back.
Yep.
So we're excited to have Kayla Yogel for one more year. So what does next season look like for Greyhound women's basketball?
Well, I think we're gonna be better. We've realized, we've connected, we figured it out, and I just think I'm looking forward to seeing if we are going to continue where we left off to start. We're going to have a lot of experience, and I think we added a couple new people. Certainly having Kayla back is a huge boost to us. And I think the other part is they all, went through COVID, and they're going to be hungry. When we look at Scranton that won the championship, and Catholic who played for the championship, and E-Town made the NCAA tournament. We competed with those teams. We lost to Scranton in overtime. Like we we're right there.
Yep.
So we got to do a couple little things better, and I think we will, and I think we'll have a different mindset, coming in. So I'm very excited for the new season, and hopefully the players are as well.
Mary Beth, thank you so much for spending time with me on this episode of the Hounds Huddle podcast, allowing some time for you to reflect on your career, on some teams and some special events that are very meaningful to you as well. So thank you for taking time to do this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I had such a great time talking with Mary Beth Spirk, the head women's basketball coach and director of athletics here at Moravian University. We had the opportunity to reflect on her past as a student athlete, but also all the different memories over her coaching career as she finished her 35th year at the helm of the women's basketball program, including the last 5 years as the director of athletics and recreations here at Moravian. Be sure to follow the women's basketball program on social media at Moravian WBB. That is Moravian WBB on Instagram, Twitter, and Moravian University Women's Basketball on Facebook. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and follow Moravian University Athletics as well. That's all I have for you on this episode of the Hounds Huddle podcast. Until next time, I am LJ Smith, signing off.